Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Joel Book here from the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Happy to be with all of you today, wherever you may be and however you may be joining. Thanks so much for granting us an hour of your time today. I want to welcome all of you to another installment in what has become our most popular webinar series ever, which is titled The Future is Now. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of customer engagement, and I'm going to get to my very special guest here in a minute. But before we begin, just a couple of minor housekeeping items. I want to remind all of you that it's easy for you to subscribe to this webinar series and receive announcements as to when the upcoming webinars will be held. You can see the link at the bottom of this slide. It's very easy to simply go to our website, exacttarget.com/thefutureisnow. And you'll be able to sign up and then receive both email alert when the upcoming webinars are scheduled. I also want to remind all of you that in the event that you may have missed one of the previous installments in this series, you're not left out. In fact, every one of these webinars that we have conducted is now available at YouTube. So you can either go to YouTube and watch. Also, all of the slides that we use in these webinars are always posted at SlideShare, so it's always very easy for you to access the content. And as always, if you ever have any questions, just feel free to email me at jbook@exacttarget.com, and I'll be happy to direct you to the exact location. Well, without further ado, I want to get started today because we have more than 900 of you that have joined us today. Both here in North America as well as around the globe. So I definitely want to get started. And once again, I'm absolutely delighted that our good friend Jay Baer, who's president of Convince and Convert, is alongside today to really take you through this discussion. When we talk about people that have really been, I think, at the cutting edge of digital marketing and so experienced in helping brands really understand how to engage consumers, how to attract them to their brand, how to onboard them. And of course, today the focus of this webinar is all about engagement. One of the best people in the business to carry on this discussion and share his insights is Jay Baer. And I'm going to turn the controls over now to Jay as we get started. Jay, welcome in, and thanks so much again for joining us.
Thank you, my friend. Welcome to everybody. I am at the controls of the webinar. Delighted to be back with all my friends at Salesforce Target Marketing Cloud for the big webinar series. Today we're going to talk about utility, why smart engagement is about help, not hype. Friends, the difference between helping and selling is really just two letters. But today in modern business and this complicated marketing climate that we're all in, those two letters make all the difference. Because when it comes to engagement, when you get to the engagement phase of the one-to-one customer journey, you can, and in fact you should, play the long game. And the long game is all about value exchange. The need for you to provide value to your customers and prospective customers is necessary all the way through the funnel, including out the bottom end of the funnel. Now, one of the examples that I absolutely love of companies using engagement wisely, using engagement to play the long game, is Hilton Hotels. Hilton has this remarkable program on Twitter called Hilton Suggests. It's at Hilton Suggests. And what they do is they just pay attention to Twitter. And when they have an opportunity to assist, when they have an opportunity to engage, they just do that. In fact, this program started very humbly, Joel. They took volunteers from just 10 or 20 hotels in the U.S. and said, look, we know that you already have a job in the hotel. You might be in food and beverage or concierge or front desk. But in your spare time, could you just pay attention to Twitter? And if you find an opportunity to help, just help. End of instruction manual.
It's really interesting, Jay, that you make that point. So often at times I think we fail to realize that some of our best brand ambassadors are our own employees. You talk about what Hilton is doing. One of the things that I'm seeing more brands begin to do now, and I know you're well aware of this, they're using social listening. They're using tools like Radiant 6, which is one of our products in the Salesforce One platform, that are enabling brands to be able to actually define the keywords that they want to listen for in whether it's Twitter posts or Facebook posts. And then once they spot somebody that is maybe posing a question or has a problem or an issue that relates to that, they then actually have people that proactively reach out. Are you finding that more brands are really beginning to maybe understand how to leverage social media kind of as a listening post where they can then, again, reach out directly to those folks?
Very much so from the listening side, no question. I think the difference with what Hilton is doing in comparison to what many companies are doing is that Hilton is in fact playing the long game. They are playing the helping side of the equation purely. So in this particular example, this guy says good places to eat near the Magnolia Hotel downtown Dallas for Saturday. You'll notice that he wasn't tweeting that at Hilton. In fact, he wasn't tweeting it at any person at all. He was just tweeting into the wind the way people do. But Hilton saw that because they had listening set up. They had searches set up on Twitter. They said, yeah, we can help this guy. So they were strategically eavesdropping. They jump into this conversation and they say, at LT Houston, Wild Salsa on Main or Campese's on Elm are awesome, both within walking distance of your hotel in Dallas. Enjoy. But Joel, here's the thing, and then this is, I think, the part that's really fascinating, at least to me. That hotel, the Magnolia Hotel, is not a Hilton hotel.
It's not.
So now you have, so Hilton now is using staff time to assist somebody that they know for a fact is not a customer at that point. But yet they're still going out of their way to help him because eventually he's going to be in a different city and is going to need to book a hotel. And at that point, hopefully he's going to think of Hilton first. They are playing the long game.
So when you talk about playing the long game, in this case, what Hilton is doing is really trying to create a favorable impression, obviously, of the brand to do so. Let me jump in with a question. And folks, I failed to let everybody on today's webinar know if you do have a question, just please use the chat function there at ReadyTalk, as our friend Charlie Johnson has. Jay, Charlie has a good question. You know, we talk about employees being your best ambassadors and monitoring social media and reaching out. Charlie's question, I think, is very, very appropriate. He says, what if you're a financial services company? What if you're a company that may not necessarily want your employees giving advice on social media, for example? Are there maybe more structured or approved methods of really being able to leverage social media to identify individuals that may be looking for help regarding some type of financial services product?
Absolutely, and in fact, I don't want it to seem as though this program was random or untrained. It's just that these were volunteers within the Hilton hotels. They are all trained, and they have an entire training program to make sure that they know how to approach people in social media, what to say, what not to say, how to make sure this isn't sullied with a, come on down for a free cup of coffee at the hotel, which sort of makes it a little less helpful or a little more salesy. So there is a lot of training there, and there's a tremendous amount of great work being done in financial services today in the same way. Take a look at what American Family Insurance is doing, for example. They have now something like 10 or 12,000 agents from around the U.S. trained in social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on how to help people in small bursts that builds relationships, that builds engagement, that ultimately yields new customer relationships down the road.
Jay, what about the ROI of this? It seems like what we're talking about here obviously is not without some investment, whether you're actually setting up a social listening center powered by Radiant 6, you have employees that are now trained to proactively monitor and then reach out to individuals that are seeking help. Are you, at this point, are we far enough along where we can actually see that there's an ROI that's associated with this?
Oh, absolutely. Now this particular example is a little different in that Hilton doesn't track the ROI of this program definitively. Now they could, for sure, right? What you would do is you would say, let's make a note of everybody we interacted with on Twitter. Let's take their name and try and get their email and then do a match back to the Hilton Honors member database, then do an analysis of room nights both before and after they interacted with the Hilton Suggest program, and then see whether or not there's a correlation between being, sort of having an interaction with the brand in this format, and then additional room nights down the road. That is totally possible, right? That is, you don't have to have any particularly special technology to do that. You could do it. Hilton could do it. But it does require a fair amount of labor. And so what they have said is, look, we know this works, and we don't feel like we need to spend the time to put an actual dollar figure on it. And in fact, sometimes you do have to ask yourself the question of, what's the ROI of calculating ROI, right? You can sort of drive yourself crazy with that question.
And you can also incorporate a direct response component. In other words, if you spot somebody that's asking a question, you can privately tweet to that person with a link possibly to a white paper or maybe a link to an offer, something
Absolutely.
like that.
Yep.
That then does allow you to track.
I do have a great ROI example. There's a friend of mine who, her name is Holly, and she is a leasing consultant in Washington, D.C. She's one of the stars of my new ebook that's coming up just a month from today called Youtility for Real Estate. Same idea as all in the real estate industry. So she's a leasing consultant, and she essentially took a playbook from this Hilton Suggests idea. She pays attention to Twitter, and when people say things like, and this is literally what she uses Radian 6 to find, people say things like, I hate my roommate, or why are apartments so expensive, or can't find a 3-bedroom, right? She looks for things like that. She jumps into conversations just as you see here, and she says, hey, roommates can be a real hassle. If you ever want to get your own place, I can probably help you. I'm a leasing consultant. I help people find apartments that are right for them. And she started doing this and spends, 15 to 30 minutes a day doing it. In the first 4 weeks that she was participating in this way, she generated $150,000 worth of new leases.
Wow. Very, very smart, very savvy. 15 to 20 minutes a day.
Yeah, I mean, because, you're doing searches. You're not interacting with tons and tons of people. You might interact with 3 or 4 or 5 people a day.
Exactly. Very, very smart. I don't want to belabor this one, but I'm glad we had the discussion so that we can really begin to maybe get some important seeds planted here with folks about maybe a way to think differently about social media. But folks, I'm seeing more and more examples, just like the one Jay's been talking about, where companies are really now understanding how to monitor social media to really be able to spot people that need help. And back to Jay's point, if you're looking to grow your brand, if you're looking to really attract people to your brand website, it's a whole lot more about helping than just hyping your brand.
Absolutely. And as I said, you have to embrace that power of eventually. One of the challenges we have as marketers today, I think, categorically, is that we have all this technology, including technology owned by Salesforce, and all of that makes us think and behave faster. But yet in many cases, business results accrue slowly over time, especially when you're talking about engagement, which is the topic of today's webinar. It's not a 5-minute process, right? It's planting the seeds that eventually yield new business or referrals or word of mouth and things like that. And it's hard to do. Trust me, I'm a digital marketer. I've been in this business for 20 years now. I know how hard it is to be patient in online marketing, but it really is important, and I think it pays off down the road if you can build a program that is really rooted in value. Mm-hmm. So I call this principle of useful marketing utility, Youtility, best-selling book by the same name. As I mentioned, the new ebook, Youtility for Real Estate, comes out on November 4th. You can pre-order it now. Just $2.99, end of plug.
A bargain.
It is quite a bargain. It's actually, I really, really like it, the real estate book. I think there's great examples. So how do you define utility? It's pretty simple. Utility, Joel, is marketing so useful that people would pay for it. It's marketing with so much value that if you said to somebody, hey, would you kick in a couple dollars for this? They'd say, yeah. You know what? I actually would kick in a couple dollars for that. It's marketing that people cherish instead of what we typically do, which is make marketing that people simply tolerate. Mm-hmm. Would you pay a few dollars to have, an entire network of people who work for Hilton Hotels recommend restaurants to you? Yeah, you would do that. Would you pay to have somebody like Holly help you find an apartment? Absolutely you would. And
so it's a value exchange.
It's a value exchange. Now you don't usually charge for it because it is in fact marketing, but it is so useful. It is almost marketing as a product, if you will.
That's a pretty bold statement, but I think a lot of people on the call are wondering, how does that cause me to maybe rethink my marketing strategy or the tactics or my messaging so that I'm constantly delivering more value to consumers?
Well, I think one of the challenges we have in business today is there's this whole climate and sort of thought leadership around just be amazing. That the key to marketing success, the key to business success is to be amazing, is to go viral, is to sort of transcend your natural path by doing something that is wildly awesome. And yeah, I mean, that can work. You see examples of it every day, but I feel like that's more a recipe that is based on hope, not a recipe based on strategy. And so what I tell people is that stop trying to be amazing and just start trying to be useful. That if you focus on being useful, you will eventually succeed. This is one of my favorite examples from Huggies. This is a test program in Brazil. It's called Huggies Tweet Pea, and they take this little device, a little plastic bird, and it attaches to the front of the diaper. And when the diaper senses moisture, it sends a direct message tweet to the parent that says, change the diaper. Then it has a whole supply chain built in because it measures how often you change the diapers, and you can order diapers and have them shipped to your house right from the mobile app. Now, that's free in Brazil. It's marketing for their product, but it is so useful that you would pay for it. Would you give them money to have a diaper wetness sensor that automatically sends diapers to your house? You're darn right you would. Absolutely. The best and most engaging experiences are almost always useful experiences, and we crave that kind of information. In fact, Joel, I think you may know the book Contagious by Jonah Berger, and Dr. Berger is a business school professor at Wharton, and in his book he talks about a fabulous case study that he did with his class at Wharton where they analyzed every single New York Times article for a 6-month period, all the online articles. It was tens of thousands of articles. And they found that articles that were useful, articles that had some sort of utility, if you will, built into them, were forwarded 30% more than average. Of course they were, right? Absolutely. We are conditioned to appreciate usefulness.
I do like that book, Contagious. And folks, on today's broadcast, I would absolutely recommend you pick that book up because a lot of these principles Jay's going through are probably going to sound a lot like common sense. Why doesn't everybody do this? And I'm glad you talked about the earlier point, Jay. I think sometimes we're so conditioned to try to be amazing, to try to go for the big idea. Now, make no mistake about it. Big ideas have a huge place in marketing in terms of building and sustaining brand awareness. But I think in this era of the connected consumer, and you talk about consumers, back to Jay's point, that are naturally conditioned to help others, if you give them something of value that they can then share, whether it's an article, whether it's an offer, some type of content, we are, as consumers, we naturally want to share that. We want to write a review about a company's product. We want to share our experience with that brand so that others don't maybe make the same mistake that we might have made. We definitely want to be helpful. So a lot of these concepts that Jay's going through are in his book called Youtility, which if you haven't read it, you should, because so many of these concepts go such a long way toward brands driving very deep, very powerful levels of engagement with both current as well as prospective customers. And in this whole era where marketing is now moving at an extremely high rate of speed, I mean, we're into high RPM, 24/7 sense and respond marketing. The easier you make it for your customers to be able to share content that is useful to other people, the better position you'll put yourself in to drive traffic back to your website where you can then engage them.
Well, and Joel, I think that this kind of marketing is required now. It's not required at the exclusion of any other kind of marketing, but I think all businesses large, small, in between, B2B, B2C, P2P, PB&J, need to be doing some kind of utility program, some kind of marketing that helps, not hypes. Because if you can do that, right, if you create utility, if you create things that are really useful, your customers and prospective customers will keep you close. Because what happens is that they tend to start treating your business more like they treat their friends. If you think about how we interact with our friends in social media, right? We pay attention to them, we listen to them, we follow them. The same thing can happen to your business if you're coming at it from a position of selflessness, of saying, look, let me give you something of value, and then eventually if you want to do business with us, that's fine, but first I'm going to give in order to get. Like our friends are useful, right? Well, that's not entirely true. Some of our friends are deadbeats, but work with me here. Many of our friends are useful. And your business can be useful in the exact same way. It really can. And it doesn't just have to be big companies or small companies. It can be any kind of companies. This happens to be a large company example. I really like this one. This is from the Coca-Cola Company. This is in Bulgaria, I believe. I should have made a note on the slide, but it is somewhere in that vicinity. And this is their mobile app called the Radar for Good. It's Romania, actually. There's Bucharest right there. Of course, there's Romania. So you turn on this mobile app, and it automatically pops up on your phone nonprofits within a 3-block radius that could use your help right now. That ladies and gentlemen, is a utility.
That is very, very powerful. I was completely unaware of that example. How's that
Isn't
working
that cool?
for them? Do you have any idea?
Well, again, it's only in Bucharest right now, so they just have it as a test market. But the engagement has been off the hook, of course, right? I mean, you think about how powerful that is, and to be able to do something like that in the U.S. On a city-by-city basis would be a game changer. Obviously, it's a little bit more logistically complicated, perhaps because of the size of the population, the number of nonprofits, et cetera. But I hope they do continue to roll it out in other parts of the world. It's really an amazing idea.
I love that.
I want to talk about 4 different types of utility for engagement, 4 different ways to do this. And the first one is one that we have talked about in the past, Joel. It's self-serve information. One of the huge trends that's driving all of this is our need for information, a need for information that is growing geometrically. The best numbers to sort of prove that out are from Google. Google did market research a few years ago called the 0 moment of truth. Some of you on the webinar may have seen that research. It was really groundbreaking. And what Google did was they surveyed tens of thousands of American consumers across a whole array of purchase categories: financial services, food and beverage, travel and tourism, etc. And they found that in 2010, the average American across all of those categories needed 5.3 sources of information. And a source of information could be an email, it could be a word-of-mouth mention from a friend, it could be a TV commercial, it could be a blog post, etc. Anything that mentions a company or a product could be a source of information. But people needed 5.3 sources before making a purchase. In 2011, they needed 10.4 sources. So think about that. In 1 year, we needed twice as much information before buying the exact same stuff.
Jay, I mean, obviously, we're 3 years removed from when Google released the 0 moment of truth and released this particular stat. I guess I'm wondering, and you may not know the answer to this, I'm wondering just how much this stat has changed in that 3-year time frame.
Yeah, they have not updated. Yeah, it's a great question. They have not updated this particular research. My belief is that this number continues to grow. And in fact, I asked them when I interviewed them for the book Youtility, what do you think will happen to this data point? And what Google said is they think this number will continue to grow well past 10.4, but that there is a natural limit. There is a point at which people are like, look, I just can't practically do any more research. But certainly you see this in your own life, right? I mean, we need more sources of information now simply because, Joel, we have more sources. I mean, everybody's got a smartphone. Everybody's connected to high-speed internet all the the time. So today, why would you not do research? I mean, just in the last year, mobile data usage doubled in the U.S. Doubled in 1 year. That's crazy. So today, your customers and prospective customers are kicking the informational tires like never before. There's no barrier to research. There's no friction to learning. Anytime you're going to buy something, whether it's a chicken sandwich, a condominium, or a sweater, you're going to do a lot of research. That's why Yelp and TripAdvisor and sites like that are so important, and people talking about brands on Facebook. There's this unbelievable research that happens before any purchase that never used to happen. And you see it in your own life, right? I mean, my kids ask me questions all the time, and this trend has made parenting so much easier. My kids ask me questions, and I don't have to know anything. I just say, look it up.
Look it up.
You're holding a phone while you ask me the question. Just look it up. And
What's
your customers
interesting,
are looking it up.
They really are. You know, in this era of the connected consumer, isn't it true, Jay? Every consumer is now a researcher, and every consumer is also a broadcaster. What I mean by the latter point is that, and you've already talked about this, consumers, we are naturally wired to share. And if we have a good experience with a brand, we want to share it. And now it's just much easier to do that. So back to your point on the number of information sources that today's consumer checks before making a purchase, I'm going to guess a large share of those sources are going to be user reviews, going to be the opinions of others in their social networks regarding their experience with that brand or that product.
Absolutely. And in many cases, it's content that the brand itself creates, and that is a key point here. If you think that you've got enough information on your website about your products and services, you probably don't, right? Because you don't have as much information as people need to make a decision. And what I find really interesting is brands are now sort of really playing with this self-serve information concept and going deeper and deeper and deeper in how they provide information to their fans, especially post-sale, right, and this sort of engagement part of the funnel. This is an example from HBO and, of course, the very popular show Game of Thrones. And if you've ever gone to the HBO website and gone to the Game of Thrones section, the depth of information they provide fans right there on their site is extraordinary. Interactive maps, videos, character studies, background stories, all this kind of stuff, which you think, well, geez, you've already bought HBO. Like, why do you need to go to all this trouble? Because it creates word of mouth, it creates loyalty, it creates engagement, and it pays off for them eventually. You watch Game of Thrones, Joel? You a big fan of that show? It's a good one.
I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones, but you know, I have not been to that site. But
check it out; it's amazing.
Well, and what I do find is that, other very, very popular series, House of Cards comes to mind, the popular Netflix series, they're building tremendous communities. And again, those people are sharing tons of perspective, not just about the show, but there's a bond that all of those folks have around that particular show. HBO, Netflix, I think doing a really good job of really feeding into that jet stream by providing ways for people to be able to congregate, people to be able to share. Blue Mountain, this other example that you have up here right now is a really good example. Folks here in the United States, you may not be familiar with Blue Mountain. They're the #1 ski resort, and not just ski resort, but resort, because they also host a lot of corporate meetings at their facility. They're located in the province of Ontario. Jay, I shared this example with you, but one of the things I love about Blue Mountain is that they really are very, very focused on asking their guests their impressions of their experience, whether they come to ski, whether they're there hiking, whether they're there for a corporate meeting event. And they use email to thank them for coming, and then they invite them. Here you see the newsletter sign-up page right here, which is where I think Blue Mountain does a really, really great job of inviting their guests to stay connected with them. Jay talks about, the importance of brands reaching out, caring. Blue Mountain does a really nice job of saying to its folks, hey, we want to have you back. The best way for us to keep you up to speed on upcoming events here at Blue Mountain is to become an email subscriber. And they use email as that conduit, as that connecting thread to stay connected. It's one of the reasons that they have such a very, very high rebooking rate. It's one of the reasons why they are upselling maybe single-time visitors to multi-pass or multi-time skiers, through special promotions like that. And they use email to invite these folks. Share your perspective at TripAdvisor. Let others know what your experience here at Blue Mountain has been. I think it's a really, really smart thing that these guys do, and it's paying off huge for them. They've got a tremendously high revisit or re-guest rate where folks are coming back time and time again. I really love what Blue Mountain is doing. We've been working with those folks for some time now, and they're very, very good.
Well, and they provide a tremendous depth of information. Some of it's created by them, some of it's created by their fans, but they provide a comprehensive amount of information about the services that they provide so that people can make a decision when they're looking for self-serve information. And I think that to summarize this part of the utility option, it's this. Relationships now are created with information, not just people. There was a time when relationships were purely interpersonal, right? That you would actually window shop, or you would call a business and say, what do you have to offer? And a salesperson would cold call you and sort of tell you what they had in their bag of tricks. And none of that works anymore because people do the research themselves first, and then when they can't get any more information, when they can't get any more questions answered themselves, then they begrudgingly call or fill out the Contact Us form. So you've got to make sure that you can self-educate people as much as possible and then flip that relationship from an informational relationship to an interpersonal relationship.
What's interesting, Jay, we talk a lot about email here at Salesforce because, out of the 10,000 plus brands with whom we work, the clear majority of them are using our platform for highly personalized email communications, not just for marketing, but increasingly customer service and so forth. One of the things that I'm amazed by in this era where all of us are very, very concerned about data privacy, what we find and what the research shows, though, is that if you give consumers a plausible reason to share personally identifiable information with you, meaning their needs, their interests, what issue or what problem they're looking for a solution for, they will absolutely share that. Now, you have to explain to them how we're going to use that data, how we're going to use that information. As long as you stay true to permission, as long as you stay true to privacy, you will have a consumer that will trust you. And I think that's the other part of this thing too, Jay. When we talk about your point here, relationships are created with information, not just people. Smart brands today are forging these kinds of relationships based on trust. Sure, they're asking me to share information with them about what I want to know more about, but if they honor that and they do deliver content to me that's relevant, I will absolutely champion their cause, and I will share it.
Boy, no question that that's true, and it's a great segue to the second part here, which is radical transparency. And Joel, you said the magic words. Trust is the prism through which all business success must pass, and that's true even post-sale, even in the engagement part of the funnel. Without trust, nothing else matters. Product doesn't matter, price doesn't matter, customer service doesn't matter, supply chain doesn't matter, software doesn't matter. None of it matters without trust. And one of the best ways to gain trust and maintain trust is to be massively and disproportionately transparent, to sort of be honest about things that maybe in the past we just wouldn't mention. And perhaps unexpectedly, one of my favorite examples of this in action is from McDonald's. McDonald's has a program in Canada, also now in Australia, called Our Food, Your Questions, where you can ask McDonald's any question you want about their food on this website shown here. And now tens of thousands of questions have been asked, millions of questions have been read, and the questions that people ask are not softballs, right? It's not fake. It's not like, how come your food is so delicious? It's not like that. It's questions more like these. What parts of the cow is the beef from? And is there any added fillers or anything else to the beef? Friends and family ask me this all the time. Now, I used to work for a big corporation at one point, a long time ago before I became a consultant, and I would remember what you used to do back in those days when you'd get a question like this. What you would do is you would just delete this, right? That you would just, I'm just going to ignore this. And you can't do that now. because smart companies don't run from this kind of question. They run toward it because it allows you an opportunity to engage and build trust. This is how McDonald's answered that question. Great question, Jamie. Go ahead and tell your friends and family we use only 100% Canadian beef. Our burger patties are made from the shoulder, chuck, brisket, ribeye, loin, and round, and we don't use any fillers. After cooking, we season your patty with salt and pepper. Our Angus burger recipe uses 100% Canadian Angus beef and also includes our Angus burger seasoning, which you can read more about in McDonald's FoodFacts. They have 12 people in their company that's working on this program full time, because in many cases they have to get information from their supply chain. Somebody asked the other day on here, hey, tell me about exactly how the potatoes are grown. Well, McDonald's doesn't know that themselves, so they had to go talk to the potato guys and get all this information back. I mean, and you think, geez, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of expense. Here's the thing, Joel. McDonald's has tracked this very specifically, and they have found a 31% increase in trust among people that they categorize as skeptical consumers. Now, just by being the ROI is of that, right? What the ROI is of a 31% increase in trust for a national chain, it's extraordinary.
Well, and my question to you is this phenomenon, meaning proactive listening, not burying this, but actually, as you point out earlier, running to the question rather than running from it, is this a lesson that applies strictly to consumer packaged goods or B2C brands, or do you find that the same thing holds true for B2B brands?
Everywhere. In fact, here's a B2B example right here from a company called Appfolio. Appfolio is a software company that powers property management companies. So their customers are property managers, property management businesses. This is a real-time feed on their website of their customer service outcomes. So every time they help somebody in customer service, they actually ask them on a 1 to 10 scale Net Promoter Score, how would you rate the service you received, 1 to 10? And then they feed that in real time, unedited, to their website. So this is literally, when I grabbed the screenshot, this is literally the last 8 customer service interactions they had with all their customers.
Is it hard, Jay, to put this kind of culture in place in a company today? I mean, you advise a lot of companies on strategies and tactics for all things digital. Are you finding the kinds of programs like McDonald's has put in place in Canada and Australia and this kind of a program here? Is it difficult for companies to put these in place, or maybe the more appropriate question is, what does it take for companies to actually do this and do it well?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Joel. It is equal parts culture and marketing, because you either believe in your heart in the principle of being helpful and the principle of being transparent, or you don't. Right? I'm a good consultant, but no consultant is good enough to convince you that you should be helpful as a strategy if you don't believe it in your heart. So to some degree, companies that are tuned to this sort of thinking find this to be the greatest thing ever. And if you just simply are like, look, I don't care, it's not how we roll, it's going to be a tough sled. There's no question about that. But the best way to get these kind of utility programs adopted, in my estimation, is not to try and sort of turn over everything that you do 180 degrees. It's to take a look at all the marketing that you're doing today, and then how do you make that marketing more useful? How do you add a useful component to what you're already doing? That's probably the first step. And the second step is to do some smaller pilot programs, some test and learn programs you think about Hilton, how many things that Hilton does as a business, lots and lots and lots, including national television, etc. The Hilton Suggest program on Twitter is a tiny, tiny part of the overall Hilton marketing ecosystem, but it's a great part, right? It's a part that has impact, that creates engagement.
The other observation I have, listening to you talk about this example of the software company, Jay, the lines are between marketing and customer service, and even the lines between sales and marketing are blurring. Because today's consumer, I talked earlier about today's consumer is not only a researcher, they're also a broadcaster, they're a reporter. They're very, very active. And it seems to me that in this era where customers are so connected and brands are only as good as their last transaction, as their last interaction. with that consumer, that these lines between marketing, how we create brand awareness, how we drive demand, that line is now blurring with sales, where the actual product is purchased, where we're now onboarding the individual, and now customer service. In the old days, Jay, we used to kind of throw it over the wall. Once we generated the lead, marketing threw it over the wall to sales to close it, and then once they closed it, they threw it over the wall to customer service. Those days are gone. Today, that consumer expects to be treated consistently, regardless of what stage of the life cycle they're at with the brand, which is why I don't see how a brand is going to succeed today or thrive without having this kind of a proactive strategy in place, where they are taking that kind of very transparent approach to engaging with consumers.
Well, no question. I think the big difference is real-time internet access. Everybody's always online, as I talked about earlier, and now so much of customer service is public. Whether it's Twitter, whether it's Yelp, whether it's TripAdvisor, whether it's anything like that, Amazon reviews. You see a lot of B2B software review sites now that just specialize in that kind of information. So customer service is now a spectator sport, which makes it marketing's problem at some level.
Absolutely does. I'm just doing a quick time check. I know we've got about 15 minutes left, so I don't want to hold you up. Let's go to the next principle, utility.
So the third piece of this is humanity, which is certainly a parallel to trust. But I think one of the very best ways to engage and to keep your customers, especially in the engagement side of the funnel, is to make them the stars, right? Is to make your customers the star of your marketing instead of making your product the star of your marketing. And that is also the principle behind cooperative content. A lot of what we're talking about here today is useful content marketing. And people say, geez, that seems like a lot of work, and it is, but it's a lot less work if some of the content or much of the content is being created by your actual customers. So one of my favorite examples is an example that both Joel and I use all the time from our friends at Western River, who are a provider of luxury travel packages. This is mostly whitewater rafting type of program. This is one down the Grand Canyon, which would be a fantastic trip. They have this amazing program where when you finish your trip, you get an email, automated email that comes from Salesforce, and it says, hey, Joel, we hope you loved your trip. Tell us what you liked the best and upload your very best photo. So Joel does that in this simple form, and then they can take a look at it, and with one click, Western River can add it to their blog, just like this. Boom. And there's also a rating there, 5 stars, which turns into a Google rating. And then they can say, geez, Joel, we liked yours so much, we put it on our blog. Here's a link. And we're going to share it on our Facebook page. You should share it with your friends as well. They've now generated more than 1,200 customer reviews through this program. It's amazing.
This is phenomenal. Well, Jay, for years you've been talking about UGC, user-generated content, as being one of the most powerful forms of content that any brand can create. We see more and more examples of brands, B2B as well as B2C folks, that are taking exactly the same approach that Western River is. And for all of you that are on this webinar today that are from a small business, and you may be saying, I can't do what McDonald's does, I can't do what XYZ does, think again. Western River Expeditions, one of the reasons they dominate in their category, and they are technically classified as a small business. The reason they dominate in their space, which is high adventure whitewater rafting trips, is because they're doing everything that Jay has been talking about. They go to great lengths. If we had time, we would actually take you through the whole process. When you come to their website, they ask you, what type of trip are you looking to take? Is it just you, or is it a family trip? Is it you and your wife, or are you looking for a trip with the grandkids? They then take the answers to those questions, and then they deliver content to you online that is relevant. They give you the opportunity to order a DVD so that you can actually get that from them and then actually experience these trips. And then back to Jay's point, you can now read the reviews of others who have taken exactly that same trip. Their two most powerful tools for engaging and informing and driving bookings are their website and email. because the same content that Jay just took you through here, you guys see this review right here, that content is not only on the website or in their blog, they now also have the ability to selectively serve up that content in email once they know that you're interested in that same trip that those folks took. Very well thought through, very simple. Data's key. They have to have the right technology platform. We're so honored that they've selected the Salesforce One platform to power everything that they're doing. But this is a great example where user-generated content is enabling them to really do an excellent job of informing others about whether that kind of a trip is good for them. And Jay, I see this time and time again. Jessica Alba's company, which is called The Honest Company, does a similar job here with reviews of the skin products that they market through their website. And I see so many other examples of brands that are doing this, and it's just rock solid, smart marketing.
Yeah, and it can be even easier if you want it to be. This is an example from Nestle Purina, where they look at Instagram, and when they find pictures of dogs, this is a great picture that just a person took of their dog. Awesome photo, right? So they see this from the Beg & Strips brand, and they say, hey, is it okay if we borrow this photo? And the lady said, sure. So now this is the same photo on the Beg & Strips Instagram account, and then they liked it so much, the Beg & Strips then recropped it and put it on their Facebook page. So this is completely user-generated content. Very, very simple. Obviously, you need to ask for permission, but very, very simple. Now, the last way I want to talk about is real-time relevancy, is being massively useful in the moment. And sometimes what we find is that the best way to engage with people is to be the best possible solution for whatever circumstance they happen to be in. Not an okay solution, but the best solution. This is a very timely example that I adore from Kleenex. Kleenex has a web application called Achoo. And the way this works, Joel, is you put in your zip code and you say whether somebody in your house is sick right now, and then they use a Google API to see how often people are mentioning the word flu in your neighborhood, and they tell you how likely you are to get a cold or the flu within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, my. Very cool.
Isn't that terrific?
It is.
And
very
one
cool.
of the things, go ahead.
Well, I was unfamiliar with this. I'm so glad you included this today. This is very, very neat.
Yeah, it's really a great idea. And one of the things that I think is interesting about this idea, and in fact some of the ideas that we talked about today, not just this one, is that they're examples of giving yourself permission to make the story bigger. If you want to build engagement with your customers, especially post-sale, in many cases that engagement needs to be about a topic that's not just your products and services. You can transcend the transaction with your utility. You can provide things of value that aren't necessarily about whatever it is that you sell. It needs to be relevant, but it doesn't need to be just about your products. Lowe's does this particularly well. Lowe's has a program on Vine called Fix in 6, where they have dozens and dozens of helpful household tips, 6 seconds at a time, short Vine videos. This is one that says, lost your watering can, find a plastic bottle, and the little video shows you how to just poke holes in the top of the plastic bottle and use it to water your plants. Well, here's the thing. Lowe's actually sells watering cans. Right? So now you have a company making the story bigger, giving you helpful household tips that actually show you how to not buy their products. You want to talk about sort of taking the long-term approach to engagement. It's amazing to me. Now, let me say this. How do we come up with those ideas, right? How do we find ways to be useful? How do we find topics that make sense for this? And I think the challenge that we have today in many cases is that we're surrounded by data, but we're often starved for insights. And one of the things that I think we forget to do as marketers now, because we get so busy, is actually have customer conversations. Many of the pieces of the Salesforce Marketing Cloud can help you do this, can help you understand whether it's social listening, whether it's conversation software like Chatter, whether it's just simply email like we talked about with Western River. You have to tap into what your customers want in order to really provide the best possible utilities.
So be a proactive listener.
Absolutely.
make it easier for customers to engage with you. I think the other thing too, and I know you're going to talk real quickly about customer journeys, but I read a lot of what McKinsey and Company is now writing and speaking about. There's a really, really great team over there led by Dave Edelman, who heads up their whole focus of their practice around marketing and sales, and how companies are now using customer insights combined with technology to deliver a customer experience that is really memorable. But they don't do it just once. They just don't deliver a great experience during the buying process. But one of the things that Dave Edelman points out, you have to now match that as you go into the product usage phase of the relationship. All of that takes insight, but it also takes technology to be able to automate that. We just wrapped up Connections, which is our annual digital marketing conference, and we talked a lot about this new era of customer journeys and managing the customer's different journeys with your brand, from the way in which they shop for your product, how they buy the product, how they use the product, how they tell others about their experience, and so forth. I think, Jay, we're at a really interesting crossroads here in the whole science of marketing, where, back to your point, we're really seeing the smart brands now spend a lot more time around creating this conversation with the customer, listening and then responding. Whether you call it sense and respond interaction or sense and respond customer engagement, this is really where we're headed, because this is what the consumers want.
Absolutely. And I think ultimately what we're trying to produce is marketing that is so useful, people would pay for it. That's the test. That's the bar that we have to clear, because marketing has never been more competitive. It's never been more challenging. We're so fortunate that we have incredible software that can help us meet this challenge, and I certainly hope that you will be able to take that and use it in your own business starting as soon as tomorrow. I think we've got time for a couple of questions, yeah?
Yeah, we do, Jay, and you've made some really, really great observations. And let me just kind of bridge back to something that you just wrapped up on there, and that is, when you look at engagement today and in this whole era of the connected consumer, and you talk about certainly a lot of the cultural issues or decisions that companies make, which is to be a company that is focused on utility, helping the customers versus just engaging in hype. What do you personally view as the cornerstones? When you're sitting down with a client, you're taking a look at how they're approaching marketing, sales, and customer service, and they say, Jay, help us get better at doing this. What do you really point to as being kind of the main cornerstones of their of their whole strategy for doing this well?
I think it's first understanding what customers really need, and it's not usually their products and services. I mean, here's the analogy, Joel. Nobody in the history of the world has ever needed socks, but everybody in the history of the world has needed their feet to be warmer. And when you market to people and say, we can make your feet warmer instead of we sell socks, you're much, much better off. That's the foundation of this approach, is understanding what people's needs really are.
And I think that goes to the point you made. Companies today are awash in data. I'm always amazed when I sit down with a client and I'm asked the question, tell me about what you know about your customers, and the answer is, we know a lot. The problem is it's scattered in about 13 different sources.
Yeah. We know a lot. Here's the spreadsheet.
Yeah. The problem is rarely lack of data, but I'm so glad you made the observation. The problem is lack of insight. What do we really know about this individual? Where are they at in their relationship with us? Have they just hit their website? Are they strictly a browser, or have they actually purchased? Are they a one-time buyer, or have they purchased again and again? Did they used to use the product but now have lapsed, where we now need to re-engage them? I think that's the issue that brands face today. And then when we talk about these different journeys, we really need to understand no customer, or not every customer, is at the same stage of their relationship with a brand. This is why having that insight is so key, and then having the right technology to be able to engage with these individuals when they want us to engage with them. We talked a lot in this broadcast today about active listening and proactively responding. A lot of you, if you want to dig deeper into this and learn more about the technologies from the Salesforce One platform that power this, Radiant 6 combined with Journey Builder are extremely powerful tools. We talked a lot about email and the way in which brands like Blue Mountain Resorts and Western River Expeditions are now using email to further the conversation. But again, folks, it's not always about promoting a product. The thing we know about email, for example, is that the reason it is the single most trusted channel for one-to-one marketing is because of its maturity and the fact that the consumer controls it. They can switch it on or switch it off. The last question I want to toss to you, Jay, is from my friend Liz Morgan, and one of the things Liz and I talk a lot about when we talk about the kind of this new era of customer experience and the way in which brands really have to think differently about marketing and rewire their marketing. Liz's question is, how do you really envision consumers purchasing utility? You talk about marketing so valuable, that consumers would pay for it. How do you really answer that kind of a question, or what's your perspective on that?
It's a great question. Hi, Liz. Usually they don't purchase utility per se. Usually utility and the useful information leads them to making a purchase down the road, right? So utility is what gets them in the funnel, drives them deeper into the funnel, and keeps them engaged with your brand post-sale. The transaction itself comes somewhere else and is about somewhere else. I mean, think about the Hilton example. You can't actually buy advice from them on Twitter, but you can sure as heck book a room from them because you interacted with them on Twitter.
Exactly. Well, folks, sadly, we're at the top of the hour, which means that we're out of time. If you've ever heard Jay and I on a webinar, you know that we could go on a long time. I find Jay immensely interesting. And, Jay, I just can't thank you enough for giving us an hour of your time today, sharing some of your insights and perspective on engagement and on the whole art and science of being a useful brand. If you haven't picked up Jay's book, Youtility, I highly recommend you do it. It's a bestseller, and I mean it, because it is loaded with rich content that will absolutely help you. One final note, mark your calendars for these upcoming webinars. You'll see on this particular chart here, we've got upcoming webinars on October the 23rd, November the 11th, and November 20th. If you have not registered for these webinars, do it now so that before it slips your mind. Make sure that you're online and are ready to join us, because this particular webinar series has really struck a nerve with a lot of folks and been very helpful. From all of us at the Salesforce Marketing Cloud, I just really want to say a big thank you to all of you for giving us an hour of your time. If at any time we can be of help to you, please do not hesitate to call or email us or come to our website. Everything is moving very, very fast, as you can all tell. We try to be at the cutting edge of the major trends that are reshaping marketing, sales, and customer service. Hopefully you have found this webinar useful. So with that, Jay, I just want to thank you once again, and I just want to say thanks to all of you that joined us today. Folks, have a great, great rest of the week, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.